Thank you, Pam. And it's gonna be up here one day too, soon, right? And thank you to RJ for always doing a wonderful job, and I love this bookstore, and we're so lucky to have this store in town, so hopefully you support them all year long. I promise to keep this short, even though there are two books to tell you about. One is The Clue in the Crumbs, number 13 in the Key West series, and the other one is The Ingredients of Happiness, which is a standalone women's fiction, something entirely different. So I'm going to start by telling you about each of the books, and then I'll talk a little bit about the writing life, and then take questions. So Pam, you'll tell me when to. How's that? Is that good? Can you hear?
Yeah.
I can speak up.
Speaker.
Yeah, is that better?
Or
Speak up, I'll speak up. Okay, closer. Yeah. Hello. Yeah. All right. Is that right? Yeah, okay. I'm gonna start with the ingredients of happiness. So after 21 mysteries and one novel of suspense, this is not a mystery, which was hard for me to grasp, and it may be hard for you too. But I wanted to write the story about a psychologist who had landed a job, a prestigious job at the Yale University Psychology Department, fictionalized, of course. If anything bad happens there. She has just moved across the country from California, but at the same time as having her job, she's fallen into writing what her agent and publisher think might be the next best-selling pop psychology book. So she's got a lot going on. The trouble is that in spite of all of this success and the fact that she has a high-powered divorce attorney boyfriend in California, she's not happy herself. So the conflict comes from that instead of the dead bodies right away. I'm going to read you just a little bit of that so you get a flavor of her voice. This is Dr. Cooper Hunziker. Things my mother taught me, part 1, chocolate cake makes everything better. This thought floated through my mind as I paused, willpower wobbling, preparing to run the gauntlet of glass-stained cake that greeted each coffee shop visitor as soon as the door closed behind them. Carrot cake, sponge cake, coconut cake, poppy seed pound cake, peach shortcake, chocolate cake with chocolate fudge frosting. Not a single one was on my no white flour, low carb, low sugar, low fat. I'm in control of my life diet. Except I wasn't in control, and every cell and synapse in my body recognized that. Could I get a smallish piece of the chocolate cake? I asked the girl behind the counter. She shrugged and grinned, the piercings around her lips and nose bristling. Sorry, we've already cut it into slices. What if you bought a piece, ate half, and threw the rest out? Or wrapped it up for tomorrow? As if that would ever happen, I said to the child. Might as well give me the whole thing. I'll do my best. I paid for the massive hunk of cake and a full-fat latte and carried the soul-soothing loop to a small wooden table near the far door. This is based on Claire's, by the way. My attention caught on a couple sitting at the next table over. I had taken them for lovebirds with their heads bent toward each other, whispering sweet nothings, sharing a slab of coconut cake. His voice rumbled, and I made out the words, try again, a different therapist, the puppy. Then her hissed voice grew louder. I don't want the puppy. I never wanted the damn dog in the first place, she said. She dabbed the tines of her fork over the crumbs on the plate, though most of her cake was intact. She brought the fork halfway to her mouth, but then let it drop to the table as she grabbed her purse strap and slung it over her shoulder, standing. She lowered the volume of her voice a notch. You don't seem to understand. I can't do that. I need space, lots of it. 3 months apart taught me that. Right now, in this conversation, I feel like I can't breathe. She pressed her palm to her throat and then clapped out of the shop on tall heels, model thin and businesslike, leaving her husband, I assumed, sitting alone. Awkward as it felt, we were left facing each other, and I couldn't avoid meeting his gaze. His cheeks bloomed pink, and he flashed an embarrassed smile, in spite of the sweater and the glasses and the tiny overlap of his front teeth. Once he smiled, I could see he was cute. The kind of cute that makes your gut flip a little once you've noticed. That went well, he said, and crooked another smile. Sorry to subject you to my marital dirty laundry. She'll come around eventually, don't you think? From a cake-loving woman's perspective, I mean. I don't know her, so it would be hard to say, I offered, trying for something non-committal and diplomatic. But supposing, he said, his face so hopeful, you were giving your very best advice to a lovesick friend. How could I flat out lie? Things my mother taught me, part 2, I said. Don't count on someone else to make you happy because chances are you'll end up alone anyway, except for the dog. You definitely got the dog, and that counts for something, right? So that's Cooper. As you can see, no one dies except possibly of embarrassment. So this book took forever to get written. And then find its way to publication. I was writing, here's somebody who always comes to the Jungle Red blog every morning. You guys should look that up because every day we have a new subject, a new guest. But I went back into my files to look at when I had started this and found a draft from 2008. So I've been working on this. It's been a labor of love with years and years of revisions and new ideas and old ideas. But the thing that never changed is the character, Dr. Cooper Hunziker. I've always had the idea of writing about a happiness expert who isn't happy in her own life. I just had to figure out how to dig deeper to understand who she really was and why she was that way. Okay, I have to confess, it was really hard to figure out how to move the book along with no dead bodies. In a mystery, boom, you have a murder, you have a detective, you have suspects, you have, ruling out suspects, new suspects. The structure is all there and it's so welcome. This one was a lot harder. My agent finally reminded me, and she read multiple versions. Use your chops as a mystery writer. There can be mystery other than murder. So that was helpful. Because of my previous career as a clinical psychologist, some people have asked me, is Cooper you? And I luckily not. So there are some things from my real life that I used in this book. For example, her research started out as my dissertation from graduate school. Another lucky thing, my writers group, and Chris is there and Angela's in the back, they kept saying, maybe cut back on the research a little bit, cut back on the description of the subjects and what she's doing, because no one wants to read that much about mother-infant attachment in a novel. I also spent 3 years at Yale doing my internship and my postdoc years, so I really enjoyed setting it around Yale in New Haven. Again, I will say the parts about the psychology department not true. But there are really cool gargoyles if you've been down and looked at the buildings around Yale. And one of the things Cooper does to make herself feel better is to talk to the gargoyle that's right outside her window. And I think I always bring the psychologist perspective to what I write, just wondering what in someone's background brings them to this point that's extreme enough that you could want to follow them in a novel. And it's often family drama and angst, at least in my book. Okay, so I'll tell you a little bit about the other one, The Clue and the Crumbs. This is the 13th in the Key West series, and I know a lot of you wonderful people have read them all, which I'm so grateful for. I love writing a long-term mystery series because you get to know the characters so well, and they always surprise you over and over. And it fits exactly with my other job as a psychotherapist doing long-term psychotherapy. So nobody comes right in and says, oh, my mother was a bitch and my father this and that explains it. Oh, no, it takes months and months and sometimes years to unravel it. So I really enjoy that. The other thing is trying to get a fresh angle on Key West and what murders could happen. There aren't really, I don't know if there are any murders. Well, maybe two. Well, oh, one of our neighbors. But downstairs. A mystery, right? We all
The neighbors.
All right,
So they got paying them what's some place.
So I try not to voice the same thought on you over and over. And let various characters who you've seen before move forward into the spotlight and also introduce some new ones. So if you've read number 11, which is the Stone of Contention, then you might remember that Hayley Snow went to Scotland for her so-called honeymoon with her husband, her new husband. And she goes to the home of Violet and Bettina Booth after the shocking loss of Violet's son. She had no idea what she'd find there, and really, I didn't either. But as I wrote about those sisters, even though at first they were deeply grieving, their personalities really popped, and they got along like a house afire with my other senior citizen character, Miss Gloria. They just really meshed. So I started thinking about how could I get those sisters to Key West so I could get the three of them back together? And since they had won a baking contest in the UK, don't call it England, they having a baking contest called UK Bakes Key West, that they were the show runners, the head people for, would make some sense. So I imagined they would be coming and they would be interviewing people who would be cooking things with them to see who could move on to the show. Okay, so I'll give you just a little snippet of that. And if you visited us, you will recognize this. Greeting visitors personally was a tradition on our island. The airport authority had plans for a fancy new arrivals building, but in the meanwhile, visitors tumbled off their planes on steep stairs, trooped across the tarmac under the sun, sweating in their boots and overcoats, and entered through a gauntlet of islanders in shorts and flip-flops. Just inside, 20 yards from the place where they disembarked, a bar served tropical drinks and piped out Jimmy Buffett tunes. Each exodus from the tarmac into the arrivals area of the terminal reminded me of the opening of a college basketball game, where a team was introduced at their home arena, cheering, hand slapping, chest bumping, hand-lettered signs, special little happy dance. That kind of chaotic welcome. Visitors love to come to Key West, and most hosts love having them. For today's pickup, Miss Gloria had hand-painted a sign on cardboard. Key West welcomes the Scone Sisters. The letters were done in pink and green glitter, and cartoon style palm trees and tropical drinks with umbrellas danced around the edges. For weeks, Miss Gloria had vacillated over what she should wear, eventually choosing a plaid t-shirt from the Sisters' Scottish clan with these words spelled out in sparkling cursive: "Keep calm and eat scones." She'd special ordered one for each of us, including Nathan, who so far refused to model it. Nathan's a police detective and he's reserved, shall we say. The sisters had grown famous across the UK after winning the television show contest, the UK Bakes Scone Edition. Not only were their scones incredible, but these two slightly dumpy Scottish ladies turned out to love the camera, as they say in the TV business. They were funny and adorable, and they knew baking inside and out. Now they've been invited on a tour of our country, doing guest demonstrations and judging contests, but most importantly, hunting for the next participants in the American edition of the show. Violet and Bettina were the last passengers to disembark the plane. Swathed in plaid wool, they entered the crowded arrivals area, blinking like badgers emerging from a den into the light. Miss Gloria shrieked with excitement and flapped the glittering sign. "Welcome, we are so thrilled to have you here in our country." She hugged them each in turn, and they hugged her back. "Give me your coat," she said. "You're going to roast if you stay all wrapped up as if you're visiting the Highlands." So I've known for a while how much people love this character, Miss Gloria. I've had people write me and say, she's the poster child for senior citizens, and I want to be like her when I'm in my house. So now that the two senior Scottish citizen women are in cahoots with Gloria, really nothing will stop them. And I told you guys before that I know better than to look at reviews, but I can't really help myself. And there was one yesterday that I'll share because it means a lot when someone gets what you're trying to do. So she says, "In any case, the finale is a wowzer and one I didn't see coming. Give it a read. You'll enjoy not just the rhythm and beat of Key West, tiki boat ride, anyone, but the intriguing characters that people Hayley's world. Kudos to author Burdette for her respect for the elderly and family ties, both blood and of the heart. But in case you should worry that I will get a big head, then I saw this one. I enjoyed this book a fair amount. I suspected the correct killer fairly early in the book, but still enjoyed reading to the conclusion. Something I really dislike is Miss Gloria's sons. Maybe this is purposely done on the author's part. I really don't know because she always tries to make me happy at the end, and this aggravated me. I didn't write it just for her, but so for about half the books I've written, the ending comes to my mind before I've gotten to the end, and then I write it down really quickly because it's like a gift. It's like it gives you something to shoot for when you're stuck in the middle, which I find to be the hardest part. So I was imagining as I was writing this book that the ending would have those two Scottish women and Miss Gloria taking a tiki hut cruise. So of course, the idea of them floating away, if you've seen it, it's a ridiculous looking boat, but it made me giggle just to think about it. And I tried to get various friends to come along, such as Mr. Callahan, who said, no way. John is in his good sport, and our neighbors, Lynn and Jim, were visiting, and they said, sure, they would go. And it's such great research because you see things that you just wouldn't otherwise imagine. But John saw John Ray jump out. The rest of us were, I don't know, drinking wine or something. Jump out and slap the water. And then there was a group of dolphins that came in and out, all the, floating all around us as we went, around sunset. And also I realized it was St. Patrick's Day, which would make the whole scene even more fun. So that leads me to the question of, some people like to know, how is a cover chosen? Because it's the publisher team in New York who chooses it. So they always ask me ahead of time for a summary of the book and my ideas of what might be on it. So I sent in this idea, and I marked my favorite. A tiki hut bar with a picture of bilious green drinks and partly filled glasses on the counter, along with the gray tiger cat. This is Hayley's cat, Evanru, and he's on every cover. And the hut is decorated for St. Patrick's Day, green tulle and shamrocks, etc. The cat might be looking at the dock on which a white ceramic baking pan is in pieces, and also a butcher knife on the ground. And then I went on to describe the logo. So you've seen it. There's no tiki hut. Nothing St. Patrick's Day. The cat is there, of course, but the one thing that they did change, my agent loved it, the team loved it, so then that's the point where you think, hopefully they know more about marketing than I do. But the one thing they did change is, instead of the knife, the cat had a mouse dangling from its paw. And I said, that's bad in a professional kitchen. And then the animal lovers might object to that too. So, so what's next, you might wonder? As soon as I get through this week with John's big birthday celebration, then I have the 14th book due September 1st. I have about a quarter of it left to do, so I'll be busy with that. It doesn't have a title yet, but I know it has 2 timelines, one from the 70s and one in the present. And this came from an email that a fan sent me saying, I love your books, and I was down there in the 70s in a hippie encampment with another friend. We just traveled down there, and it was a wonderful time, and we would never do it these days, but back then. And of course, I'm thinking, ooh, what if somebody was dead there? So it's one of those women from the past has come back in the present to find out what really happened. And of course, Hayley's getting a bit of a reputation by now, so she comes to her for help. After that, let's see, if I finish that one, which I will, I'm hoping to work on another women's fiction book that's based on one of the minor characters in the Happiness book, and that is the girl who serves Cooper cake, who has the piercings bristling. Her name is Winifred, after my friend Mary Pat's daughter. And she's adopted. She's never known her biological parents, but she will get to know one of them in this book. And then she finds out that her father, who she's never met or ever heard of, is a famous French chef. So of course she's going to Paris to explore that. And I was in Paris in April, but I know I'll have to go back. Yeah, the question is, that book, I don't think it's going to do as well as The Clue and the Crumbs. And partly that's because once you get known for writing mysteries, that's what people expect. And then they start into this one and say, wait, this isn't a mystery. And also, it was hard for me to learn how to write that. I think I could do it better the second time. So the question will be, do I have the nerve to write what I want to write, or should I write what I think would sell? And then there's a contract for the 15th book. So after that, yeah. Oh, and one more thing. So Pam mentioned that Key Lime Crime won the bronze medal for popular fiction. The Dish to Die For won this year that same bronze medal. So that just came out in paperback, and if you were to buy one of those, there's some little stickers that say bronze medal. You get one of those. So I'm gonna stop there and see what questions you might have. Yeah.
You create in the ingredients of happiness. You create some really distasteful characters. In particular, Stella.
Oh, yeah.
What was your inspiration for Stella? Because she really is someone I never want to meet.
Yeah. I don't think I should answer that.
Yeah, I'm like, where did she come from?
Well, I'm all the time thinking there is no murder, so how else can I ratchet up the tension? And one of the ways is to make the work environment unpleasant for this person who's insecure and shouldn't be, but is, and wanting to get settled in. And she knows she's in a fight for her job because there are more young professors than there is a physician. So that's where it came from, just trying to make it difficult.
You succeeded.
Oh. Anybody else? Yeah,
How long between when the hardcover comes out and when the paperback comes out?
the hardcover, so the hardcover just came out, for Clue in the Crumbs. The paperback will be out in July, so next year, yeah.
Just before the new.
Just before, yeah, it's supposed to juice up the sales. Which reminds me, and Judy, I meant to write and tell you this, there's also going to be Lucy Burdette's kitchen cookbook.
Oh, that's you.
Yes. So that's coming next July too.
Oh, I'm.
You're gonna get a free copy. How about anything else?
Yes, we all go to Key West, once a year. I'm doing it for probably 20 years. And what I really like about your Key West mysteries, and I've read other Key West mysteries, is that you have real places, real restaurants, real streets, some people with their real names. That's what makes it really interesting. Thank you.
She said, if you couldn't hear her, that these three ladies go to Key West every year, and they like the fact that there are real places in Key West in the book, and also real people. And it was interesting because An Appetite for Murder, which was the first one in the series, a woman who was in the writers community said to me, "Are you sure you want to include real places, because they're going to change?" Which they do. Key West changes a lot, and the pandemic changed things, and the hurricanes changed things. But I like showing off the real town, and if it's not there anymore, then you'll find that out when you get there.
And there's new places for us to visit, because you give us new places.
Yeah, and I tried, and it helps me explore new things too, because you can get in a rut and just walk to the Cuban coffee queen. Yeah, Mark.
Well, you just said, the whole COVID thing around it has really changed it. So will that be an element in one of the books that you're writing now?
She's asking about COVID in the books. COVID was so awful that I don't want to write about it, and I don't want to read about it. So in the Dish to Die For, it's mentioned in the first chapter that Hayley's a little bit blue because it's been hard. It's been hard for everyone. And I even had people complain about that much. So the answer to that is absolutely not. No, I don't want to go back there.
Maybe some restaurant, had a new page
Oh,
out
there is.
Came back, or people are so excited.
There are places that have gone out of business because of that crisis, especially restaurants, because it was hard. And it's hard down there to get help too, because it's really too expensive for regular people to live. So it makes it hard. Somebody else.
And just remind us why you're Lucy Burdette.
Okay, yeah, remind you why I'm Lucy instead of Roberta.
Yeah.
So before these books, I had written 5 books in the Golf Lovers Mystery Series, which some of you loved and most of the rest of you despise. and then a 3-book series with a psychologist who lived in Guildford and worked in New Haven. Unfortunately, those books written under my real name, Roberta, didn't sell that well. So this is a new publisher and they like to start fresh because if someone goes into the Barnes and Noble computer to look up, say, Deadly Advice, which was one of the older ones, and see, oh, it didn't sell that well, we're going to order even less. So it just becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So they asked if I would change my name, and I said, sure. Lucy Burdette was my grandmother's name. So
Yes, I remember there was something that.
yeah, in the family. Yeah. Yes.
How are you going to keep feeling fresh through 15 books?
Well, this one that I'm writing with the dual timeline, I am very excited about. So I figure if I'm excited about it, you'll be excited about it. She isn't getting pregnant, if that's what you're. And 15, I have no idea. So any emails are welcome. I don't know what will happen. The only thing I can think of, and John has read this book, the book about the guy who was always going to disaster scenes. He came to speak to us at the library last year, and his company was hired whenever there was a plane crash or a hurricane or any terrible disaster. He would be called in there to help deal with the survivors and all that kind of thing. So he lives in Key West, and I'm gonna take him to lunch when we get back. I'm sure he's gonna have some ideas, although I don't want to blow the town. Right. I think I've hit all the holidays, except we won't go down in the summer because it's just blazing hot. So, yeah, the one thing that I could do is Hemingway days, because there were, I think, 48 middle-aged and older men who compete in a contest who looks like Ernest Hemingway. You can see pictures of it on Facebook, and so a murderer could get lost very easily, especially if they were dressed like one of them. But it's in July and I just haven't made it down.
Easier to go to Paris.
You said your neighbor was murdered, and I think you write one about who's my neighbor.
No, that was a little too close.
close.
Yeah, it was too sad, too tragic. I mean, all the murders are, but the real one, yikes, it's terrible. Yeah. So we always. Well, people like, there's a show, and I'll just tell you this one little story, because I'm gonna tell you more next year. But I took the sheriffs, the Monroe County Sheriff's Citizens Police Academy this past year, which was really fun. And we got to learn how to shoot and how to process the crime scene and all this. And that I did because there are some sheriffs in this book that I'm finishing, and I wanted to make sure I didn't make terrible mistakes. So as far as climate change, like that sheriff is taking Hayley back in the brush to look for something, and he'll say something like, you know, these doofuses say there is no climate change, but the water's up around our ankles. So just characters commenting like that, but it won't be a whole book about climate change. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a scary, it's always been a scary place to be, but it's part of the appeal, I think. Yes.
What are some of the worst animals that are on the
Snakes, we do have snakes, but not in Key West. What we do have is a plethora of iguanas. So we had a friend and they go up in the trees and they're green, so you don't see them. So one of our friends was sitting by the pool and the iguana must have fallen asleep and it just fell out of the tree and hit her right in the head. So that's pretty horrible. I mean, they're interesting, looking, but they are a pest. They're like rats in New York City.
One more question. Or not.
We know.
We could go right to cake.
Yes, I go right up to the cake. Come and look at the cake. It's